here. Hey there. Good to see you.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. What are we jumping in with today? We have some great topics.
Okay, so we both work with families, and something that recurs in my practice is dealing with difficult parents and dealing with the past and when you see them again in the present. And how do you overcome that? How do you move past the patterns that you've had with your parents so that when you're with them, it doesn't touch all of the emotional black and blue spots that you still have that haven't maybe fully mended? And how do you reconceive of who you are, or be able to even imagine that that relationship is reconceivable when you're just stuck in this dynamic that has been set up for so many years? And I don't think we can do that in a short time, but we'll do this over a few conversations and see what we can explore. So what comes up for you with that?
So what comes up for me when I hear you say that is kind of when we meet our parents, how we might be triggered to respond to them from a childlike place, from a much younger place.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm picturing is myself and my adult sister sitting around the table with my parents, and old patterns coming up of who gets insulted and who overtalks and doesn't let anybody else in. And I think what really comes up for me is bringing that up to presence, is to, number one, know when you're going to meet your parents. Let me just sit with myself. Let me just pause and know what's triggered for me. And then let me bring some loving kindness to where I might slip and fall. So
multiple things in there, and let's just break that down. So the first thing that I heard you say is coming from a childlike place. So what are some of the things we bring into the conversation that are those childlike places? What might we feel like that helps us recognize that?
Right. So I think the triggers are angry, wanting to close off. I want to hide. You've insulted me. I think those are triggers that come from a much younger place.
So I'm gonna suggest those are defenses to the truth. Those are the defenses that show up.
Right.
And so I think what you're saying is that we anticipate that the trigger that's coming. And so we already come armed with those defenses. Our defenses come in and we don't realize it, that we're bringing that in already. We're already
exactly
ourselves. And that way of showing up in the relationship is already setting the tone for what's going to happen. So let's imagine there's a parent and a child shows up with this protection, which they may very well feel they need, and may really need if they have a difficult parent or someone who behaves in a very difficult way towards them. How does that impact the dynamic?
Right. So I love what you said. Let's go further back and look at the trigger, and then see if we can change the way we respond. If we can come in with our adult self, we are prepared that they're going to say something, which they say inevitably will say. Mm-hmm. And how can we respond from an adult point of view without being insulting? So can that mature, wise part come in rather than the wounded or adaptive child?
So I think how to bring in that wise part, we're going to save for the next conversation. Let's just talk a little bit more about how to recognize what you're bringing with you into the conversation when you anticipate being with a parent who possibly has a pattern of ridicule, humiliation, putting you down. It could be a more gentler criticism that a lot of us live with, or they just say things that make you feel like, why do you think I need that? Like, why do you think you have to keep asking me that? Or other things that trigger a sense of powerlessness.
Yeah. And I think also to be in touch, this was very powerful for me, was what was happening in my body. And I could feel that contraction. So I wasn't going to show up fully. I was contracted and I was keeping myself separate. the protection. And just to take note, can you walk through that door and be more open, possibly be more interested in what their lives are,
Yes.
what's happening in their lives?
And let's talk, I think what we'll do is make a conversation where we can talk about, this is not an easy thing. So what does that mean? But the space that we're in, how you recognize that you're bringing something that is changeable to the conversation is if you feel that contraction in your body, if you start to anticipate that you're going to be having to have your defenses up. In my family, when I was younger, it was arguing. And my husband was, I don't know if he was my husband yet, but as my husband, my fiance, my boyfriend, he came to a dinner. And after a couple of them, he said to me, you don't have to have those conversations if they make you feel bad.
And it was like an eye-opener, really?
It occurred to me because that conversation was how I had a relationship. It was a feeling of connection. And it was not easy to let it go. And there are also things that if you're listening to this and you go, but, the buts are a good hint that there's something going on. Because the buts are also, that means there's a reason these things are there and this pattern, and there's a reason it's not easy to change, and all of those are good signs. It doesn't mean.
And I love what you said, that your husband brought up a different possibility. What else is possible? This clearly isn't working for you, but that was the one way we saw it. You only saw it one way because there were no other possibilities. And I think that's a beautiful question. What else is possible? And can I take on that role of being the wise adult and shifting the dance?
So we'll come back to this. I call them conversational moves.
Beautiful.
You redirect the energy, or you shift the conversation or the lanes of the conversation. Conversation isn't words. There's a relationship and there are different things happening. And how do you start to feel that instead of being the train on a track and you can only stay on that track, that you actually have a button and you can shift and you can take that train in different directions, that there's
beautiful
opportunity than you realize. So I think let's pause here.
Great.
We'll come back to this conversation, and the people who are following us on social media can look for the follow-up post in about another week, right?
Fabulous. Absolutely.
Okay. We'll stop here. And there it is.